welcome to Precision Golf for another one of our videos. We're going to do fairway wood versus hybrid. It's a question we get asked so much about what's right for which player, why would you use one versus the other. So thought we'd do another video. Got the same brand, going to use Titleist this time around. Got the TSR2 in fairway wood and hybrid, 5 wood and hybrid, exactly the same loft. The Ventus Blue Velocore hybrid and wood shaft. Slightly heavier weight into the hybrid because of the shorter length, but the same series. So trying to keep as few variables as possible and just the head styles, and look at why would you use one versus the other. So we'll start with the hybrid, get some shots, compare it with the fairway wood, and then show you what you're going to see and why one suits one player versus the other. So a lot of players over the last 10-15 years have started using hybrids, primarily replacing long irons, which are just unforgiving, hard to hit, come out low. So functionally, we're using a hybrid to get a little bit more margin of error versus a longer iron, and a little bit more flight. So in the main, they tend to work better, hit a bit more like an iron. So that's something which actually there's a huge amount of confusion and lack of clarity about. I think a lot of players come in saying, how do I hit it? Or don't know how to hit it. So generally speaking, the slightly smaller head shape versus a fairway wood suits a little bit more of a squeezed contact, a slightly more iron-like approach to it. So I'm going to treat this like I would a 3-4 iron. And you can see plenty of height. I got a little bit deep on that one, so maybe got a little bit too downward on that. I'm just going to rein that back a little bit. Yeah, so still a fairly iron-like swing, but a much more solid contact. I was 4 degrees down the first one, 3.5 on that one. Just a slightly better strike. So I'll get one more there. So with both hybrid and fairway wood heads versus an iron, we've got a more forgiving head, but a thinner, faster face. So you're using both to gain a little bit of ball speed and gain some performance. So getting distance gaps and representative distance gaps that are worthwhile having in the bag. A lot of the time when you're getting to longer irons, the ball speed, because they get harder to hit, the longer the shaft gets, the ball speed starts to lose that progression, really 5 mile an hour progression that we're looking for to get a 10-yard plus differential between clubs. So going to a hybrid from a longer iron gives you that bit of extra ball speed, a little bit of extra flight, and maintains the carry distance progression at the top end of the bag. And so with these, this is say 18 degrees, that last shot, 14-degree launch, 3-7 on spin. It's actually quite a nice window, flight window for this part of the bag that we'd be looking for. Enough spin to get some height and control, but not so much that it's going to balloon up. But a launch angle that I know if I were playing my 2-iron at 18 degrees, that's going to be down at 10, 11 degrees launch. So it's picking launch angle up quite a bit over where a long iron would be, but giving a little bit more spin, but not excessive spin. So I'm going to switch to the 5 wood now. So 5 wood wise, the head's larger. I'll just change the tag here so we don't muddle the data up. So hybrid to 5 wood, we're looking at quite a substantial increase in head size. So the depth from back to front on the 5 wood is 50% more, give or take. So what that does is it moves the weight further away from the face, the center of mass back in the head. It's a bit like doing that with the stance. It stabilizes off center a little bit, gives a little bit more forgiveness, proportionate to head shape. But it also, also the gearing and where the weight sits relative to center of mass helps to create a little bit more launch. The further back you go in weight from the club face, as it gets to impact, essentially the front of the head stops, but there's mass at the back that keeps going, which pushes underneath, which creates a little bit more lift. So weight right at the front like on an iron, there's none of that push forward, there's none of that compression on the head, as literally the club head gets close to really stalls out at impact, the mass at the back keeps going. So on an iron where it's right on the back of the face, you don't get any of that, so that the ball comes out flat. The further back you put it, the more that pushes under and works a little bit more spin onto it. So a bit of physics of the club head there. We can also see how much, if I hold them that way on, and granted these are upside down, but how much the fairway wood shallows out at the back. So we're able to get that weight. Let me just reverse them around, a little bit more relevant. So there's much more depth at the back of the head here. So think how far back and how low, how shallow that gets versus the hybrid where it's shorter face to back, but it's also, it stays deeper for proportion to the head shape for longer. So with the Fairway Wood, that just helps to stretch the weight low and back, which that shaping, getting the center of gravity down in the head, again, kicks the flight up a little bit more. So exactly the same loft, 18 degrees on both heads. So obviously, 5 wood, there are going to be players that just find one head or the other more comfortable. Generally speaking, the wood head suits someone who's a little bit shallower through. In part, that generally the shallower delivery promotes a little bit lower spin. So again, the head style from a flight point of view suits that as well. But if you tend to pick the ball more, hybrids, because the mass sits further forward in the head and a little higher up, you tend to need to get the weight down to the bottom, whereas a Fairway Wood, a shallower delivery, that weight sits lower and tends to collect the bottom of the ball a little bit more readily. So hence you tend to see iron players or someone who hits it more like an iron go into a hybrid and a shallower delivery stay in the lofted fairways. So data-wise, what difference do we see here? So immediately from where that's striking the screen, we can see the extra launch. That elevation change is really quite significant. So we've gone from a 14 odd launch, that wasn't middle, but we're up at 16 degrees. So see if I can strike that a little bit cleaner. That was a nice hit. So I've always hit a fairly high ball. So this one here, so again, 16.8 degrees in launch, but spin rate up a little bit as well. So we can, you can see from that, let alone the numbers that we'll go into in a moment, immediately there's a lot more launch angle. So my angle of attack has shallowed out a little bit. It's a bit of a bigger, wider arc skin. That also shallows things down, delivering a little bit more loft. Even though they're the same loft on the face, dynamically into the back of the ball, there's more loft delivered by the 5 wood. So let's have a look at the numbers and see a bit of an explanation of what we've just seen there in data terms. So I'm going to make sure we look at representative shots rather than any stinkers, because that's not very useful. And so let's take those shots there, more the most representative. So one of the things we can see here, it's a longer shaft, it's a lighter shaft, the head weight's lighter, so there's probably 15 to 20 grams difference in total weight of the club. So I'm 6 miles an hour faster with the 5 wood. That's one way you get ball speed progression and get that extra bit of distance progression. That's one of the things, again, over an iron, that's what we're really looking for. Some players really stall out in terms of club speed at the shorter length, so we need the longer club length to get, and the lighter club weight to get that extra speed. So there's 6 miles an hour of club speed, we're at 5.5 miles an hour of ball speed. So, I'm not getting, actually proportionally, you could argue I've hit the hybrid more efficiently. But we're still seeing 5 mile an hour gain. What we're really seeing here, and this is really the reason between one or other that you would use them, launch and spin differential. So the 5 wood's at 16.8 degrees, the hybrid's at 14. So that's a significant change in launch angle. Spin rate's up 4,300 with the 5 wood, 3,700 with the hybrid. So again, picking up, broadly speaking, 20% of spin rate, and close on 20% of launch, so proportionally that whole flight shifted up. So we're going from 107 foot height on the hybrid to 140 foot with the Fairway Wood. So whilst we're 20% higher on the launch dynamics, because of the ball speed gain, we're getting 40% more, 35% more flight height. So a significant amount of extra height, and then it's landing, I'll scroll the screen over very slightly, the hybrid at 44.9, the 5 wood at 52.1. So there's a significant increase again in terms of land angle that we're seeing. So generally speaking, that paints a very, very clear picture of what job roles the clubs do. If I'm playing, I'm going to take a club, I've added a 5 wood in purely because I played the London club in winter. It's a long course, there's water in front of greens. I'm trying to maximise height and maximise stopping power when the ball hits the green. So I'm going straight to the 5 wood for that. The hybrid's something which, if you're already a higher ball flight player and you don't want to elevate it too much, and you're a stronger iron player, then the hybrid gives you that extra forgiveness, a little bit more ball speed, but without overdoing it. Similarly, if you're a high spin player, the hybrid keeps that spin a little bit lower. If you're a low spin player, the 5 wood elevates it up that much more. So there are the kind of key elements from a trajectory point of view that are very, very clear. And the other bit is distance gain. I'm seeing, from a ball speed point of view, again, if you're a lower speed player or a lower flight player, so for me, because the spin goes a little on the high side, the 5 wood actually stalls out and doesn't gain proportionally as much as the ball speed would look for. So from a 5 mile an hour gain in ball speed, you'd generally see, as we said, roughly 10 yards. Because the flight height is up that much, I've gained 1.5. But the stopping distance is much, much shorter. For a lower speed or a lower flight player, that extra elevation makes a huge difference to your potential carry distance. So that's where we're seeing a lot more players in 7 woods, probably even 9 woods. We're doing so many more of those for moderate speed or lower flight based players. We're even seeing 9 woods on tour. Matt Fitzpatrick, Dustin Johnson. We've seen those played even by those players to get, again, that huge extra elevation that they're going to get coming into those greens. So there's a real clarity in terms of ball flight that we're looking for. And so some players from a delivery point of view are going to suit one club more than the other. If you're a little bit more trappy, a little more downward and on top and squeeze it slightly more, then that deeper weight, shallower profile, lower CG of the fairway wood, you may well find it just pops it up too much. And a hybrid keeps the mass in a position where it's on the back of the ball and a more solid contact, more consistent ball flight. If you're shallower through and you pick it off the turf, then the lower centre of gravity of the fairway collects the ball better and will give you a more consistent contact. So a couple of elements that mark one head out, one type of club out better than the other, hopefully given a bit more clarification on why you might use one versus the other. Any questions at all, please add them onto the back of the video. We'll always do our best to answer them. All the content's done for you guys watching, so if you enjoy it, we've got the Monday Lives, we've got all the other content you'll find on the channel. Subscribe, hit the like button, and we'll continue to make as good a product for you as possible.